Oh, I'm sorry. Do I ask for a motion, or can I just make that motion? I'd like to move to reconvene to public session. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. All against? No, nobody. Okay, so we're going to reconvene. The first thing we're going to do is do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And the flag is it's folded up behind that screen. Yes, there we go. We can imagine it. Oh, Ms. Atkins.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Linda, this is where I ask, have there been any communications?
I was asked by my administrative assistant to remind all the board members that from October 23rd to 26th, New Jersey School Boards Association will be holding their annual workshop in Atlantic City. Anyone who is interested in coming needs to let my administrative assistant know as soon as possible with the specific arrival and departure dates that you would like, because you can't go for less than that whole time.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next thing is the approval of our minutes. Linda, I'm sorry. It's embarrassing to say I've forgotten. Do I make the motion to approve them, or do I ask?
You ask for a motion.
Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve our minutes from our regular public session on July 17th and our executive session of the same date.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second?
Do we need to do a roll call, Linda, or can we just?
I'll take a roll call.
Okay, would you?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Nicola?
Yes.
Ms. Pietrobono?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Roslowitz?
Yes.
Thank you. Now it's time for our superintendent report, if Scott's ready. I believe it's, is it in fact, clearly I should have watched a video of how these meetings go.
Good evening, everybody. I've asked Suzanne Ackley, our supervisor of humanities, to come tonight to talk about program highlights in the area of English language arts. She has not had a chance to speak before the board and the community about some of the great work she's been doing with our teachers. She's specifically going to highlight elementary workshop models that we've had in place in our school district for many, many years, but have not implemented with fidelity. Thanks to Suzanne and her team, we've come back to that model, and we're being more consistent and continuous across the grades, K-5. I know there were also some questions about the early childhood program, pre-K-1 classes, and the role teachers, college reading and writing workshop would have at that level. So Ms. Ackley is going to address that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to give you the mic, okay, Suzanne?
Thank you so much. Okay, good evening, everyone. So as you recognize, Reach for the Stars, that's what we're doing, and that's the mural from Bartle. And in case you're not familiar with the lingo, I just wanted to give this nice little overview. Balanced literacy, as the research shows us, as the literacy gurus tell us, includes reader's workshop, writer's workshop, and language word study. What does word study mean? It's what we used to call phonics. It's understanding the sounds that words, that form the words. And for Bartle, it takes place in Words Their Way, and which is something you're familiar with or may have heard. It was here years ago and brought back strong, as we said, with fidelity. And at Irving, word study is in the form of Foundations, which is Wilson-based and great for the kids. So we're going to focus a lot on Reader's Workshop and understanding the workshop model first, now that we've seen the three components that make up great literacy instruction. Direct, explicit strategy instruction means that the teacher is giving a lesson based on one strategy each day. And the teacher models it so the kids have that live coach in front of them of what it is to be a reader or a writer. It's developmentally appropriate. So instead of a lecture that's happening for 30 minutes or so in the workshop model, kids are gathered in a carpet, they're sitting, hip to hip, crisscross applesauce, whatever you want to say, together in a U shape, and the teacher's in the front. And it's a quick mini lesson of the teacher modeling for 10 minutes or less. And then the kids talk, and they turn and talk to their neighbor, and they have a lot of social skills happening. And then that quickness of going back to their seats and trying, whether it's in reading or writing, all developmentally appropriate. You're not sitting in any one spot for too long of a time. You'll see this in the kindergarten video in a little bit. It's best practice for literacy instruction because it's scaffolded instruction. So that means that the teacher models it, explains it, the kids have an opportunity to talk to their neighbor and then get a handle on what's being talked about. They get an opportunity to work independently, but then the teacher comes and confers and leans in and says, I noticed this, and starts talking about what the child's doing either in reading or writing. So that support is really crucial to the student internalizing the skill and the strategy. And then they have the opportunity to learn from their teacher and their peers in this. So it's daily differentiated instruction, because I may confer with one person about one topic and confer with another student on a whole nother topic, supporting the students very specifically. It's culturally responsive, and I'm going to talk more about Dr. Beanfolks in just a minute, who worked with Lucy for 15 years. So I do, we do, you do. It's very much the motto for Workshop Model. And the teacher modeling the strategy is the first step to the kids seeing what it means to be a reader, what it means to be a writer. The very next thing is that the students get to engage in using the strategy. So, okay, can you try this as writers? And they might have a little piece of paper right with them, or their dry erase boards on the carpet, and they try something out, maybe a new beginning or any strategy. And then they go and have the support of you're doing this with the teacher support and even with peer conferences on the you do independent part. That model of I do, we do, you do is supported by the New Jersey Council for Inclusive Education. So it's going to support all of our learners. When we're in Reader's Workshop, that mini lesson is a short amount of time, and the teacher is leading the guided reading instruction. The independent reading is happening. So let's say there's 4 groups in the classroom. One has word study that they're able to do at their developmental level, very, very specific based on the data the teacher collected from Words Their Way or Foundations. And a group is reading independently. Group is working independently on their writing, and then a group is with the teacher, and then they're going to switch. So we've had guided reading successfully. We're boosting that, and the literacy centers have been going successfully, but now the mini lessons are really going to be strengthened by what we have from the resources for Lucy's units of study, which is the new component. So this is really great. 1 minute clip, if you can bear with me, with kindergarten.
Oh, so you're teaching us about houses?
This is some nonfiction writing.
There's a whale.
What do you know about whales in the ocean?
They're really big animals that go really deep down in the water.
So you can see the kids are being creative, they're enjoying what they're doing. This student has a lot to say about the garden.
Gardens and horses.
So you get an idea of what's happening for the teacher with all these great things.
Is that in
Go
Highland
back.
Park, Ms. Ackley, that video?
I wanted to show from Miss Daly's classroom and from Miss Lucas's classroom some of the things that happened, but because of people privacy, I was worried. So this is a random video, so we didn't have any kind of concerns of people privacy. But our students wrote brilliantly in their nonfiction unit. I remember in the first grade classroom about sharks, some fascinating things, and their drawings with the teeth and everything were just stellar. I love it. So, so those types of things are happening. So you see the kids start to realize how much they know. So it builds their confidence and it builds their ability to communicate. We're always saying use your words and find your words, and so they move from picture to, in kindergarten, from picture to words, and that huge role of word study where they start recognizing, oh, words start with a certain sound, and they start getting beginning sounds and words is just fabulous to see. So the students are going to move at their own pace and within the writing process. So it's very structured. They're going to be brainstorming. They're going to go through the whole writing process from brainstorming to drafting to revising to editing and publishing. So there's a lot of structure within the workshop. I know there's sometimes concern, but it's very structured. But it's up to the students to say what it is they want to write about. So there's flexibility there. Or it's up to the student to pick what they want to read about. So it's a time for creativity and working with friends. In our classrooms, there's great tables, and so they're learning how to share the materials. They're learning how to work with the people at their table if they need the same resource at the same time. So there's a lot of great social skills happening at the same time that they're learning their ELA skills. And then there comes this great celebration, as Lucy Calkins calls it, and it's the share session. So the independent work has happened and they've been at their seats, and just about the time they're ready to get up, they get to come to the carpet again and they get to share. And that was something I had to clarify. It's not just celebrate every writer randomly. It's, oh wow, this writer did use the strategy we were talking about today. You get to share right now, awesome. And then this student did the strategy we talked about 2 days ago. Don't forget that one. Look at that. You can do that too. So that share session is really a reinforcement for continuation of the strategies and helping kids internalize it. Very, very purposeful. So there are fourth graders here that I'm going to show a little bit of. Oh, wait, not these fourth graders. So back to, can I go back? And the other video with the bike talk. It hit escape, but it didn't.
You are very tech savvy. It's just one of those really crazy machines. Trying to go back to the slideshow.
I want to go back to the other video, if it'll let me click the other video. Video 2. And that'll be perfect.
Video 2.
Yep, video 2. Thank you so much. So there we go. He is going to give a dynamic talk and compare it to bicycle, you'll see, to riding a bike. Just give a mini lesson. Think second grade.
Guys, I'm excited. Really pumped. You know why? Because I read the books last night. What I saw made me smile. I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw. I saw you writing longer and stronger. I saw you writing meaningful stories and true stories. You get a big thumbs up on that. But as I was reading some of them, I saw that when I got to the interesting part, I wish you would have wrote more so that I can see what you saw and feel what you felt. So I went home and I looked in my writer's notebook. Guess what? I did the same thing you did. I wrote in a way where the reader couldn't really feel what I felt and couldn't really see what I saw. So today, I'm going to teach you how to take out a real interesting part of your story, and you might have more than one in there, and stretch it out and make it interesting in a way that they can see what you saw and feel. Let me show you what I mean. I wrote a story in my writer's notebook about the time I was riding my bike down Snake Hill in Central Park. Snake Hill is very curvy. That's why they call it Snake Hill. And so I was riding my bike and I was going faster and faster down the hill, and all of a sudden the front wheel hit a rock and I fell. But then I realized Hey, that's the interesting part. When I fell, that's the main part of that story. So, I said, let me think a minute. So I played the movie in my mind as to what happened. And I saw what really happened.
So he's helping the kids know visualizing is important to writing.
And I wrote it down. And it goes like this. I was riding faster and faster down the hill. The wheel hit a rock. My feet flew off the pedals. And sometimes, you know, when you do this, you can act it out. That's what I'm going to do. My feet flew off the pedals. My hands went out in front of me. My head went over the handlebars. This is going to really hurt, I thought. Crunch. I landed on my back.
So he just modeled using onomatopoeia, the sound word crunch. He modeled for them how to visualize when they're writing. He modeled for them internal dialogue when he said, I thought. And so this is just a fabulous short example of what it means to have a mini lesson with the teacher as the live example for the kids. So, and then back to presentation. We're good, thank you. So, and there's more to that, but it only goes on for a few more minutes. The whole mini lesson was 8 minutes long, and that's what it should be. It should be under 20 minutes, hopefully under 15 minutes, and as we get expert, the teacher talking is limited to maybe 10 or 15 minutes at most. So I was really honored to work with Dr. Jane Bean Folks. She was the professor in residence from Rowan University. Right now she's at Marist University, and she, I don't know where to go for the feedback.
What is that going on all night?
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's mine too.
So she's expert. She worked with Carl Anderson, the conferring guy, and he's a guru, and he was in her classroom. So she said, I taught the writing workshop model, the reading workshop model in Harlem, in East Harlem, in the Bronx, and in all different parts of New York City. And she said, the key point is to pick the books that resonate with our students, and then it will be culturally relevant. So Lucy has her favorite books, and she has her recommendations. But we aren't tied to that. There we go. Thanks so much. So, and the other beautiful thing is the Reading Writing Project of Columbia has already devised their list of recommendations that are in Spanish. So all the texts that are available in Spanish, all the titles that they recommend that are synonymous with the text that we're using, we're going to be able to give that list of text and resources to our ESL teachers, which is really fantastic. So, moving right along. So what does it look like in kindergarten through 5th grade? It looks very much like the videos when it comes to conferring and the mini lessons. And we've been implementing Writers' Workshop successfully, but now we're going to really have a Readers' Workshop with Fidelity. Lucy Calkins' units of study for kindergarten through 3rd grade. Notice and note with close reading strategies for 4th and 5th grade, which are really stellar. And then the guided reading will be a support to our readers' growth. And there were some things that people needed more coaching with guided reading. So I can't say we're all expert, but we're all moving along and making great progress. So those who weren't quite expert or just new to the field, they now have a better understanding of what guided reading is. And we're not a worksheet time and not a follow-up question time, a true engagement of reading and supporting the learner right in front of you. So, I'm thrilled that we have the workshop model. It supports diverse learners, it supports a range of needs. I don't know how I would have taught without it. And I saw great growth because of it. I had a student in 3rd grade who was reading at a 1st grade level, and by the end of the year, he was reading on grade level. So I know we can have great progress with this. And then I just would finish with if you have any questions.
In the curriculum committee meeting, we were talking about the types of readers that they
mic a
were
little bit
using.
closer?
Oh, sorry. So in the curriculum committee meeting, we talked about what types of readers they would be using, and it brought back memories of like SRA booklets.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's authentic text. It's not,
So it's not
made
like
up,
those-
contrived, decodable books
It's
that
not
I
Dick
think
and Jane.
of. Not at all,
Okay.
right? So it's just that the level, the Fontes and Pinnell level is so widely used that trade books now identify what level they are.
Okay.
So you could have a beautiful Eric Carle book or Leo Leone, and we just happen to have figured out what reading level that is.
Gotcha.
So it's no fear about that. And our 4th and 5th grade mentor texts are all fabulous. There's a Peter Reynolds book, Ish. They're all great texts that we want our kids to aspire to for reading and writing.
So I had 2 questions.
And Jacqueline Woodson, for example, Each Kindness. Love that book.
Okay. She's
They're
great
reading
author.
great things, and they'll be inspired to write great things.
One of the things that we talked about was the fact that there would be more nonfiction for younger readers,
Yes.
which I thought was great because they are very concrete thinkers, and fiction is a stretch for them to be able to write. Perhaps read, but not to write. So that was one of my questions, is that for
So
which
there's-
grades are we doing that?
There's 4 units, and there's a balance of 2 fiction units, 2 nonfiction units. So I'm excited about that. And not only that, there are text sets. So while you're reading Because of Winn-Dixie in 4th grade and you have this fabulous fiction, you also have poems to read. You also have articles to read. There's an article about bats and how they share their food and how they have friends. So they're reading nonfiction while they're studying a novel.
Cool.
So we don't forget the skills that we need to have. So our teachers will become experts at maneuvering a text set within their units, their genres.
And are
So-
those nonfiction and fiction related in subject? Like, for example, if they read Stella Luna, would they be reading the article about bats at the same time?
It could all
It
can all
could.
interweave and overlap.
But it's up to
Absolutely.
the teacher to choose the text. Is that right?
Well, the texts are now in the updated curriculum, which I think comes in September 11th. You get to see all of the
Oh, cool.
updated curriculum. But one thing I want to say about the great question about nonfiction is that we made a huge shift to middle school by putting nonfiction first.
Yeah.
Our students have been stellar with narrative writing and with the narrative reading tasks, and they have shown concern or need for improvement in reading historical texts and reading in science and technical subjects. Over many years, the data has shown that. So we made a bold change of doing the nonfiction unit first, then fiction, which means before the spring assessment happens, the one we don't want to talk about, there'll be another nonfiction unit. So their area of growth has now been supported twice instead of once. So I'm really excited for that. And the teachers were kind of like, this is big. And I said, I know, but this is exciting.
Do you anticipate that the kids taking on the more challenging of the two in the beginning of the year, will that
We
be-
picked exciting text.
Okay.
So
that won't be
we'll have the
frustrating.
motivation there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Those were great questions.
This is sort of semi-related. I know this addresses the text that they'll be reading sort of as a group and in the workshop. I don't know if you can answer this. I remember we did there was a cultural audit that we had done last year,
Yes.
and the results came back about the classroom libraries, which I
Yes.
understand is more independent reading, I think.
It is. It is.
And
But it all works
definitely a
together.
need for texts focusing on minority characters that weren't sort of stereotyped, right? We don't want to see African American main characters only in sports and the arts. Do we have funding available? To sort of help start progressing toward correcting that, or what's happening?
We did make purchases. I was just excited that
Oh,
with the
great.
budget that I had available, I was able to update middle school and high school, and so we started there.
Okay.
And I was saying there's a great book that Jason Reynolds just beautifully described what it is for the kids in middle school to have situations where they're bullied and how they face that and how they
Right.
overcome it. And he joins a track team, but it's not in a glorified sports way. It's I found my talent, and that's
Right.
to be celebrated. And that book is called Ghost. And there's I would say maybe 7 great titles that I'm going to put together a list of what we were able to add
Oh,
this
great,
year, and we'll
great.
continue building. And the teachers have a great wish list. For example, one thing is Misty Copeland's book, My Life in Motion, is available at 2 different levels.
Oh, great.
So students can access that book. And I said, what about the boys? We need to make sure we have something else interesting for
Right.
all the guys to read. So we do have great text coming. So
Okay.
I'm excited for that.
Will we be doing the same sort of adding on at Irving and Bartle with our beginning readers, so that our beginning boy readers are not just reading about football players and,
Right, exactly. So this year,
Not that that's a
the
bad thing.
kits came with the mentor text that we
Okay.
purchased.
Okay.
So Bartle has and Irving have wonderful texts that were recommended from the Teachers College Reading Writing Project. And then year 2 would be continue to boost the independent library.
I see. When you say mentor text, I know you used that term a couple times. What does that mean exactly? Is that
The text the teacher's using as the model for all of the kids.
I see.
So
Okay.
example, like Jacqueline Woodson's Each Kindness, or if I was using an Eric Carle book in
I see.
kindergarten, or if I was using Peter Reynolds' book, the Dot,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I might be using that, but then the kids can also read it independently and follow up.
I see.
So
Do you see
it
a need
doesn't
for
have
a
to
broader
be-
range of, a broader range of readings for, how are the classroom libraries used? There's a lot of independent reading that goes on, as I seem to remember, right? The kids would
Exactly.
take books from the classroom library, and do we
Exactly.
need to sort of fund a broader range of texts there for the kids to choose from?
The guided reading library actually, because people are at the same levels across grade levels,
Right.
that needs more support than the independent right now.
Okay.
That we need, if we had a grant or if we had some funding available, 4th and 5th grade have overlapping levels where sometimes they go and the bin's empty. So I supplemented with texts that I had available at Bartle from the previous series called Voices,
Okay.
and filled in with the Scholastic bins where I could. But because we're all going to be doing guided reading with Fidelity, we're going to be using books and moving kids along. It would be great to have more of those.
The guided reading libraries,
Yeah.
that's what they're
Yeah.
called. Okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm sure you know this already, but the guided reading books that you're talking about, those are for some reason in abundance in the clearance section of the Lakeshore store on Route 18.
Very good to know.
I don't know.
Very good to know.
Anything to anyone, but I wanted to kind of say that out loud.
Yeah.
20% off the entire store. I was very
Thank
excited.
Anything else? Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your wonderful questions.
Oh, thank you. This is very, very
Thank you so
interesting.
much.
I know that my kids, when they did have access to the workshop model, or at least some part of it, I'm not able to judge exactly how much it was, but it was a wonderful experience. And I remember sort of wishing that it was done consistently throughout the elementary grades. I'm so glad that you're getting that done. It's very exciting.
Besides being here, thanking you for that, I also want to express my appreciation for what Suzanne has been doing to rein in all the disparate programs that had been implemented in different
Right.
classrooms. I think she recognized this was the best practice that had been in place for years and came up with a 3-year plan to roll this out effectively at K-5. So well done. And you know what? I invite members of the board, once the school year starts and gets underway, to come visit us. So if you're interested, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, whoever's available, folks can get together, say, hey, Scott, we're available on this day. Can we come and see the workshop model in action? And then we could have you spend an hour or 2 in either Irving or Bartle. So let's think about doing that maybe
That'd be
in
great.
early October, mid-October. And then exactly you can be the guide. Sound good?
Right. A little less crazy, right? Oh, yeah, that'd be great to see how it actually looks in implementation. Excuse me.
Thank you, Ms. Ackley. I'm going to tell Suzanne to go home because it's summer, and she's coming back September 11th. You'll see both Dr. Nicosia and Ms. Ackley here on the 11th.
Great.
By then, you will have had a few weeks to look at all the curriculum revisions that we have been having our teachers do, and you can ask them questions about all those revisions then. Can I steal back one of your...
Thanks so much for coming in late. Thank you. Okay.
So I just want to spend a few minutes providing you a very, very quick update about the work we've been doing on the strategic plan now in year 2. And then I want to provide you the results of the homework focus group interviews that I conducted in the last couple of months of school. I have about 4 or 5 slides to show you. So let me just get prepared. Meanwhile, what you're seeing in front of you is the set of action steps for year 2017-2018 in all 4 focus areas of our strategic plan. And I'm going to give you some stats about the numbers and how they compare to last year's strategic plan in just a second. Okay, so as promised in June, when I met with the board and talked about the status of Pathway, the leadership team and I have rolled over any of the action steps that had not gotten off the ground, that were slated for implementation this school year coming up, or that were still in developing phase, and placed them in the 2017-2018 plans. This is a slide I showed the board and the community in June that shows the progress we made or didn't make in certain areas. And I've not broken down all those action step items for you, but you could, if you take a look at the numbers, you get a sense of how far we came in certain focus areas. A lot of our attention was placed on focus area 1 and focus area 2. You can see that's also where we had the most number of action steps to implement. Now be mindful that the plans for next year will be in review with the strategic planning committees I'll start meeting with in October. Each committee made up of parents, teachers, members of the board, and a handful of residents who have nothing to do with the school district except being here in town as residents, meet with me at least twice a year to check in about the work we're doing in the area of all of our action steps. This is a very brief statistical review of the number of action steps we will now tackle in each focus area. You can see we're top heavy in the first focus area because a lot of our work in the area of equity takes time and has to take precedence before we can unlock the other 3 focus areas. The second focus area contains the next most number of action steps. Are there any very general questions at this very early phase of my diving into the 2017-18 action steps? I'm going to be coming back to the board in October with another update, a more comprehensive update. If not, then I want to touch on one action step, A1, which signifies it falls under the first focus area, success for all. 1I, I indicates the number action step. It is in the under the first full goal area that has to do with examining our homework practices. After surveying the entire community, I identified a series of questions that I chose to ask focus groups. These are the focus groups with which I met starting in May. Students at Bartle, the middle school, and the high school, a group of teachers, and I had 2 sessions with parents and guardians. One was on a Sunday to accommodate anyone who observes the Sabbath on Saturday, and then one was during the week at night for those folks whose timing just worked out better. I developed codes or phrases that I identified from, thanks to the survey. So I looked at the survey results, which asked questions ranging from how do you feel about the amount of homework that our teachers are giving kids to how do you feel about the quality of the homework that's coming home? You know, is it, in your eyes, just busy work, or is it actually engaging work? Is it scaffolding or reinforcing things that the kids tell you that they've learned? I pulled some of the key prevalent phrases out of the survey results, and I developed codes with those phrases. And the codes guided the questions I asked the focus groups. And the focus group meetings lasted between 45 minutes and to an hour. Actually, the parent and teacher groups met with me for almost 2 hours each. And this is what, overall, after I took all that data, and I have the raw data in case the board would like to see it, just let me know and I'll send it in a follow-up email tomorrow morning. I took all the raw data and I looked for trends, frequency, you know, what kind of answers based on those coded questions I was asking came up the most. This is what I came up with for students. I am going to show you a slide after you read the notes to yourself that summarizes the trends that I pulled out of all the data that I collected. Now, a lot of this isn't shocking. I'm sure you're going to see in all the slides I'm going to share with you that
Number
that
two.
this is, what's that?
Number 2. Number 2.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That actually came up in almost all the focus groups I
Really?
met with. Yeah, even the teachers recognize that some of the work they're sending home might not be understandable for parents. And the parents, of course, mentioned it.
Yeah.
And here you have the students talking about it, too. This is what the teachers had to say.
Right back at your parents.
Oh, yeah?
Was that truth? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said something.
No, Ann said,
I just said,
back at your parents.
right back at your parents.
Ah,
After-school support is insufficient.
well, that comes up.
I mean, I think parents agree, you know.
By after-school support, the teachers are referring to what the school can provide.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I thought they were dinging the parents for...
No, what the parents can provide. I mean, what the school can provide. Don't put words in my mouth.
Sorry, we're a little upset about that.
After-school tutoring, open labs, support. Now, we did some work in this area at the middle school, but this leads me to think when we get down to putting some of this work into action, we may need to look at this again.
Yes.
How can we better staff our after-school spaces at all of our schools, even Irving, first graders, to provide even more support than we may already be providing to our kids? And the teachers did feel that homework does have some value in their eyes. It helps reinforce skills that they've taught. And here's what the parents had to say, and guardians. By consistency with the amount of homework they're talking about from teacher to teacher and from grade to grade. I heard things like, well, I'll get to this grade and I got a ton of homework, but then at this grade level, I didn't get a lot of homework.
I know at Bartle, I have friends who have twins. Each twin was assigned to a different teacher, obviously, and one twin had almost no homework. The other twin was overwhelmed, and the family problems that evoked. And perhaps the teachers, I'm sure the teachers had. The two twins should have shared the homework, exactly. I'm sure each teacher had their own sort of philosophy as to why that amount was necessary, but it might be helpful to have the teachers have sort of a shared understanding. I don't know. Maybe that's good practice for life.
There was something that I remember from back to school nights of yore that was like, if it's more than 20 minutes, then, don't worry about it and just, have your child come in and explain why it's not done. My kids were like mortified about that. I'm sure we were not the only ones either, where it was like the relevancy issue. That's really what I'm getting at, is that, if it's 20 minutes or it's 40 minutes or whatever, like if it's relevant and engaging, then it's worthwhile. So,
Hi, Ashton.
Yeah, Ashton. I just was pointing that out because I thought that was funny. It was like this qualitative versus quantitative argument where, if it's 20 minutes, but it was a really nasty 20 minutes.
Dull as
It's
boards,
terrible,
right?
and 40 minutes can go by really fast if it's something fun. So it was arbitrary, that's all I'm saying.
Be mindful of the fact that, did you want to say something? I keep reading
Well, I was
nonverbals.
also going to I recall from the sessions, there was also a bit of a discrepancy between how much time staff, teachers thought their homework should take versus how much time the students said that homework took. So there's also a mismatch between the, what the teacher expects of a certain amount of homework versus how the students actually experience that, which can happen for a lot of reasons, distractions not excluded, but that also did, I remember that did come up as well.
I asked the same, I'm going to speak to that in a second. I asked the same questions of all the focus groups. I modified them a little bit just to accommodate the nature of the group. The parents mentioned what you just mentioned, that, the parents mentioned that they mentioned indirectly what you're suggesting, saying, we realize that if you wanted to put some kind of protocol in place to provide more consistency, it would be very difficult because each child brings a different level of engagement, ability, style to the table, and it would be very difficult for the teacher to necessarily determine what those individual elements are. So they recognize that challenge. My takeaways, after looking at all the data, I mean, you may have your own takeaways, but this is what I came up with after spending a few hours with the data. Time is an issue, the amount of time being spent on homework. Nobody, I should tell you, no focus group, no individual in a focus group said we should cut homework out completely. I didn't hear that from anybody. Everybody recognized there was some value to homework, different values. You know, some felt it was good to instill work habits. Some felt it was good to help kids improve their time management skills, reinforce things they learned in school, so on and so forth. But time came out to be one of the things I heard across all focus groups, how much time is being spent on homework. Consistency, we just talked about. Consistency in not only the amount of homework that's being given per grade level, per teacher, but also the kind of homework. And then relevancy and engagement. Is the work drill and kill and not really serving the teacher's need to reinforce the skill? Or is that important? I mean, this is the discussion we have to have as a faculty now. I'll get to that in a second. And finally, support. The teachers recognize this school could do more after hours, in particular, to provide support. The parents want more support. The kids want more support. So that's a biggie. So my next step is to, once we get the school year fully underway, is engage the faculty and the leadership team in some conversations around the data and the takeaways, and potentially come up with a protocol that we could all live with, that we all feel good about, and present it to the board. I don't recommend it become policy. Right now, the board's policy on homework is extremely broad. It's one page. At least the piece on time and value, but I definitely think we need to provide some kind of standard that we can all agree on. Are there any questions, any input from the board, anything you would like to see me bring to that group when I meet with them? Probably in October or November.
I'm sure that there's a whole lot of research that you could bring to them about, you know, homework policies and other districts that have done away with homework altogether. Because I know that, you know, change is hard, and what's been done in the past kind of dictates what will be done in the future. So maybe if you could bring them some enlightening research about homework-free districts, that'd be nice. Just to give them a different perspective.
I'm asking for input. I value it, so I want to hear it. Well, one of the districts that's made a splash in our area, relatively in our area, about homework is Freehold Township. Done a lot of workshops at school boards. They didn't do away with homework. A lot of their I think a lot of their efforts have been around consistency and relevancy, engagement. But you know, visiting other school districts throughout the year, I think the timeline would have us ultimately by 2018, 2019 coming to you with something. But during this time between now and then, we could come visit.
Yeah, I mean, there was
School
one thing
districts.
that I was thinking was, you know, as relevant as you want it to be, I guess, but schools that are private schools and provide education for, you know, the very wealthy elite have homework-free policies, they have tech-free policies, like they do some really radical things. And I'm sure that they're allowed to experiment in different ways that public schools are not, but that might be interesting. You know, Bill Gates's kids are not allowed to have computers. I just think that's, you know, an ironic. Yeah, it's true.
It's not at school?
They're not allowed at school. No screens at their school.
Of course, they have them at home. So, I mean, I do see there's an issue with, you know...
They don't have them at home.
They don't have them at home?
There's a couple
I'm
different
shocked.
things I've read about. Yeah, there's
Wow.
some very high-techy Seattle kind of, you know.
Tech for others.
Yeah, tech for others, right? But they're, you know, it's a radical type of education. They're out in the woods, you know. They're doing all kinds of things that our public schools couldn't provide. For whatever reason. I mean, it might not be all that beneficial. It's just interesting to see how people who have all of the resources available to them choose to spend their time.
One of the things that I would like to see as a conversation happen in district is a conversation about homework and after-school activity balance. You know, I do know some kids who have bowed out of after-school activities for fear of falling behind academically. So they are losing out on part of their educational experience, not realizing that after-school activities actually provides part of your preparation for college and the years beyond high school. In terms of the social skills you learn, in terms of the different types of job skills you might learn, teamwork. You know, so if you're not participating in after-school activities because of the feeling of being under pressure to maintain your academics, that you're actually not building your resume for the future. You know, so that hopefully will be something that gets discussed. I know that our sports teams practice 4 days, 5 days a week. You know, for a student who has 2.5 hours of homework at night, whether it's because that's just how they work on their homework or because it really takes them 2.5 hours, you know, that student might not participate. So hopefully that will be a conversation that also will happen, because what basically will end up happening is students who are perhaps not the strongest academic students, but who are very serious about their academics, are going to sacrifice participation outside of academics because they think that's the only thing that is going to matter in the long run. So.
You can read into this however you want. I don't know if it was the nature of the group I met with, students, but it was the Bartle students of all the three groups that spoke the most about the stress of having to manage after-school activities and homework. Yeah, not the middle school students didn't mention it, the high school students didn't mention it, Bartle school students did. But again, that could just be because of the nature of this, the dynamics of the conversation, for all I know.
I mean, from my experience with my family, that sounds about right. I have 3 very different children, and the 3 of them all had that experience of some feeling of relief in the middle school at the amount of homework being so much less than at Bartle. I don't know what it was. 5th grade was especially tough. It was a solid 2 hours every night for all 3 of them. It must be a change because my kids are younger, right? So I can tell you that was all 3 of them. It was true for all 3 of them.
Well, I will keep this conversation
Yeah.
alive. I've taken into consideration for some notes, your input, including yours.
I mean, my theory about that was the testing, that there was a lot of stress on math and English in their homework, and it made sense to me that it was because of the testing.
Yeah, there did seem to be extra math, and that was assigned. More writing assignments for 5th grade last year.
And I think after the testing, especially when the park was twice a year, it was chaos trying for the teachers to try to like catch up. They just had so much
there's
to
that as
cover
well.
that
Yeah.
then the homework was piled on. So you had a couple of weeks during testing that there was no homework, and then quick, it's
Right.
almost June.
Right.
Throws off.
Well, that concludes my report.
One more question. This is not so much about homework philosophy as technology. I mean, we've talked a lot about the problems associated with giving homework that has to be done on a computer. And I know we have some, I believe we had some modems or routers that we were able to loan out. Is Jersey On sort of been implemented yet, or are we still working on funding the hardware?
We're
Jersey-
still working on funding the hardware.
Funding the hardware,
It's built
okay.
into our strategic plan, and
I
it's
know
one
it
of
is.
Ms. Knapp's tasks.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's alive.
Okay. I mean, I hope that, will teachers be given some guidance? That was a big problem last year, that teachers, especially at the higher levels, were giving computer-required homework, in middle school. And I know that, you're supposed to be able to go up and ask the teacher after class, like, I don't have a computer, can I? Or you're supposed to go to the school nurse and find out. But is there a way we can advertise that more heavily? I don't want to see another situation where some kids really just can't get the homework done. And although it's great we have the computer lab open in the middle school, obviously it's not enough.
Absolutely.
So I don't.
I'll make a note to do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, handing the mic back to you.
Okay, I think we're just going to move right along to our board committee reports, unless Linda reminds me there's something else we need to be doing first that I've forgotten about. So, Michelle, can you let us know what's going on with curriculum and instruction, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we did our meeting last week on Tuesday, I believe. I was the only one that could be there with everyone's summertime schedule. So it was a quick meeting.
Had a lot of debate.
Did you
Not
talk a lot?
Of debate, no. The agenda review had a couple different items that I had to highlight. So we're going to be tabling this, but item number 3 is the HIB report, and there were 2 cases that were new on the June report. Item number 4 is the comprehensive equity plan, and the actual revamp of the plan is due in 2 years, which would be the 18-19 school year. But what we're going to be seeing on the agenda is kind of a promissory note that means that we are working on a plan. So we have an active review of the equity plan. Item number 5 is submission of the district PD and mentoring plan, which I attached to this email with the curriculum committee meeting notes. Right. So I hope everyone got to take a look at that. Item number 6 is the Rutgers Fall Conversation Program, which was something that had been going on for a while, which I had never heard about, but it's parents in the district that are non-native English speakers are invited to come to the middle school, high school media center, where Rutgers students that are training to be linguists hold conversations with the parents about some practical topics, like how to make an emergency phone call. So they're, immersed in conversation around a table. I'm not sure the duration of the conversation, but it seemed to be well received, and it was a pretty packed room. Scott just showed me a picture, and it looked to be, maybe 24 parents involved.
Michelle, may I interrupt with a question? I'm looking at your notes about item 6, saying that it's going to be Saturdays in the middle school, high school media center. And then on the agenda, we have one that's at the Bartle Media Center. Are these the same program and just a change of time? Or are we going to have change of location, I'm sorry?
That's a good question.
Or are we going to have 2 separate conversations?
No, it should be at the Bartle Media Center.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay. So it's just the one conversation
Correct.
program on these September 7th, 14th, and 28th, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, my bad. Sorry.
No,
I labeled it incorrectly. I
or
guess.
mine, who knows?
But it's the Bartle Media Center. Sorry.
Okay.
And let's see. So
I just want to make sure that if we had 2, I wanted to know.
Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that, because that was a mistake. It was Bartle, not the middle school. The program, number 2 is, on my notes, is Program Spotlight on ELA Programs and Intervention Services. So Suzanne Ackley, who was here earlier, she talked to us a little bit about ELA, but she was here to talk about the Reader's Workshop, which she did in the early childhood grades. So we had discussed what she would be talking about and what would be presented. Then we had a discussion about curricula that was revised and up for review. So I think September 11th we'll be able to review all of that. But some of it will be available August 28th, from what I remember. And those curricula included grade 5 math, and that was because of the 6th to 7th is also included because of the revision cycle for the curricula. Kindergarten 6th through 9th, and I'm sorry, 6th, and then 9th through 12th, ELA. Service-based learning, writing techniques, Spanish for native speakers, which is a middle school course, and health, which I've been looking forward to for so long, kindergarten through 12th grade. Yay. And that will be complete by August 28th. And again, that was, we talked about that being written in conjunction or under the supervision of Gender Spectrum, as well as the Rutgers program. Now I slipped my mind the name of the Rutgers program that we worked with. The Rutgers program that kind of is overseeing.
Lucinda Holt
Lucinda Holt
represented
would be our
the program.
contact there.
I can look it up. I forgot the title myself.
Completely, yeah.
I'll look it up
anyway.
for you now while you're talking.
Thank you. And then we left that to the last because we were hoping that Rob might show up. We did not know that he was out of town. But we waited for you, Rob. So we talked about the middle school world language program and the update concerning world language. So there's still a whole lot of confusion, according to my neighborhood, about whether French is happening or not happening, and everyone's kind of, waiting with bated breath about what's going on with French. So we talked about the survey, and the survey was recently given to the community of middle school parents, and it was a couple of questions. I'll just read them. The first one was question one, in which grade is your oldest child? So it was a good mix of people who responded. It was about 39% sixth grade parents, 34% seventh grade parents, and 27% eighth grade parents. And there were 59 respondents to the survey. And question number two was, my preference for offering a new world language at the middle school is as follows. So you would select two in order of your interest, and then language one being the language that you and your child would have the most interest in learning about. So this list was compiled based on the most spoken world languages, with the exception of Latin, which is not a spoken language, of course. So the choices were Mandarin, Hindi, Arabic, Latin, and American Sign Language. And the winner by a little bit was Mandarin, followed up by American Sign Language. So overall, the total score for Mandarin was 4.34, and the second runner-up was American Sign Language with 4.26. So we kind of had a conversation about, which would be the better of the two to offer. And Dr. Taylor did some research in neighboring public school districts that have American Sign Language on the books. And what he found out was that they're having trouble locating a teacher who can teach it, so that they're not able to offer it, but it is something that they would offer. Also, he found out that ASL cannot be taught without a credentialed full-time position. I guess so. There was some discussion about whether part-time status was non-credentialed and full-time status was credentialed, and if that was necessary. So the Department of Education allows you to have a part-time staff member, allows you to have ASL taught part-time by a staff member, but you can't hire a full-time staff member who's not credentialed. I'm sorry if that's confusing, but so yeah, it's a little confusing, but so I'll get to that later. We do have the other language, which was Mandarin, which won, by a little squeak, and that actually is something that we could offer starting in September, because we have someone who is been interviewed and vetted, and I stayed, to see the personnel committee, and I was able to see resumes and things like that. So the Mandarin teacher is a native Mandarin speaker. She's Taiwanese. So we talked about the opportunities that this would allow us to offer a native speaker class for kids that were speaking Mandarin at home. And it would also be something that we could offer to grades 5 through 8, not just 6 to 8. So because we have a contact at Rutgers, Mary Curran, in the Chinese language department, we were able to find this candidate pretty easily, and someone that, I think that Mary Curran would say that she recommends. Would that be a recommendation? So anyway, that was the beginning of the conversation, and I know Rob had some questions about American Sign Language. One of the other things that came up about American Sign Language in Dr. Taylor's research was that American Sign Language, though it is recognized as a world language by the Department of Education in New Jersey, some colleges don't recognize that as a world language, so that wouldn't fulfill the requirement that they would have for admission. So that was kind of, a problematic sticking point. So anyway, there's a conversation to be had, I'm sure, but being that we could move forward as early as September of this year with the current candidate that we have for Mandarin, I think that the consensus among me and myself and I at the meeting was that we might want to consider, moving forward with this
But
candidate.
it did continue on, the discussion.
Yes, it did. I stayed for the personnel committee meeting. So Judy was involved in that conversation with me and the rest of us.
The other thing, just to tag on to Michelle rather than repeat the same thing under personnel, is we do feel strongly that we want to be able to hit the ground running with the world language in place by the beginning of the school, not put the middle schoolers through what they had to last year without having full world language. So it is a huge factor from a personnel point of view that we have a candidate that looks really like a really strong candidate ready to go. And the second thing that we talked about, Michelle and I and Scott, was about the possibility of offering American Sign Language to middle schoolers as an elective, a one-year elective, because that has been done in other schools, and we're thinking probably wouldn't happen this year, but possibly the following year. So Scott might want to talk more about that tonight.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I do. We're crossing over into personnel a little bit, but I'm sticking with Michelle's line of thought here and would like to be clear that we really did put on a full court press to look for a French candidate. I have
Yes, we did.
a list of points here that highlight our search. I know there are some members of the community who are probably upset that we can't offer French, but it was not necessarily by choice. It was by by circumstance.
Choice.
We posted the position 3 times in the Star Ledger and through our outlets. We did have 12 applicants through those 3 rounds. Unfortunately, none of them were viable. We also conferred with Dr. Curran, who was so helpful in helping us find the Mandarin teacher, and made a connection with the Grad School of Education. She actually advised us that unfortunately they had no education majors at the Rutgers Graduate School of Education, with a French concentration. Her feeling is that a lot of folks now, because of the demand not being there as prevalent as it used to be in schools, supply is drying up. And a lot of folks who do concentrate in French go into other areas, private sector, translation. The middle school principal was actually a world language teacher, and she reached out to her network and her contacts. We did post the position through FLENG, the Foreign Language Educators Association of New Jersey. So we tried to go like alternate routes here. We didn't just go through the traditional media outlets. We even conducted 2 interviews by Skype with the candidates in France and California. But unfortunately, that didn't pan out. So we did try. I do also want to state to the community and any member of the board who might have a child who's taken French in high school or took French in 8th grade, we will continue to offer French so that the incoming 9th graders, current 10th, 11th, and 12th graders get to see their French career through high school. So that won't end. I don't know if there's anything else that I shared with the committee that you haven't shared.
No, I apologize for not mentioning the French option. That we had the discussion about that. But I thought it was important to talk about the Mandarin more than anything, because I feel like there is consensus among most of the committee members in the curriculum committee that we, offer something rather than nothing. And not that it would be nothing, but, Spanish would be something that some of the kids, would they prefer choice, perhaps. It wouldn't be, a choiceless situation. And we did do the survey, it was kind of a decent amount of respondents. So we kind of felt like it was a good thing to take advantage of the opportunity to have Mandarin.
Scott, did you want to speak to the difficulties some districts have had in finding an American Sign Language teacher that is not always the easiest thing to do. So that's another reason that we were optimistic about Mandarin as opposed to ASL.
Yeah, and Michelle alluded to that. I spoke to
Oh, I'm
two
sorry.
school districts in the
Maybe I missed
county. Two school districts in the county. One had a program, very large district, had to eliminate it because the person they had teaching sign language left and they couldn't replace that individual. And there's another district, also relatively large district, not as large as the first one from which I spoke, but that is trying to offer their 2-year program, but still has not found somebody to fill the position. One other thing I want to add that I did share with the committee, but I haven't mentioned yet, if the board does approve the recommendations to approve the new course forms and the person I'd like us to hire for the position, Ms. Semier will send out a letter, snail mail and email tomorrow to all incoming and current middle school families and guardians to give them an option now to go either from French into Spanish or French into Mandarin or even from Spanish into Mandarin. So we'll see how that plays out. And I'll report back to the board in September with what the numbers of enrollment ended up being.
I also forgot to mention that in that convoluted explanation I had about the part-time versus full-time ASL, that Dr. Taylor had suggested that we maybe work on the idea of training someone who's already on staff to teach ASL part-time, so that it wouldn't have to be a credentialed instructor, but that could be a potential option for not just the middle school, but also Bartle.
That would have to be someone who already spoke ASL, so to speak, right? Not somebody who's learning it for the first time, but someone who is learning how to teach it.
Not
Is it right?
necessarily.
Really? How could you teach it after just
I mean,
learning? It's like a whole language, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's it's American. It's English, so.
But the word order is
vocabulary-
very different.
It is. There's a lot of research to be done on this option, but because the state of New Jersey doesn't require a credentialed teacher for a part-time,
Right.
option, it wouldn't be as difficult as it would be to find a full-time credentialed ASL teacher.
Oh, sure.
So again, this would be like a kind of a compromise, something rather than nothing. So ASL would be, again, like a 1-year course, and it would be the basics of ASL. It would not be, for fluency. It would be more for exposure. And, again, something rather than nothing.
Oh, I agree. Something
Yeah.
rather than nothing. It'd be great if, maybe we could even make that a consideration if we have new hires coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, it would certainly be better to have someone who had some degree of fluency.
Absolutely.
Rather than someone who had just learned, how to say a basic sentence.
Yeah, no, it would not. I mean, ideally, it would not be someone who was just going for a summer course
you know,
and then
me.
coming back in September, right?
Well, the state does require that whoever does teach the course part-time to pass a proficiency assessment.
Okay.
test.
So
So
you have some
we can't
level
just
of-
let somebody slide right in there.
Right, but a credential would be a different level of.
It would be an
fluency.
easier credentialed.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't be like, hey, who wants to learn?
I took my Girl Scout
ASL?
badge and ASL. Ready to go.
Right.
Cool.
I understood it in the same way that we have, maybe coaches that
Yes.
we're not professional athletes, but that
see
we're
what you mean.
enthusiastic about teaching. Right?
We may have teachers that speak it to some degree, right?
That
I
was
mean,
another thing that
certainly
we
possible.
still have to answer. Do we have
Right.
anyone on staff currently that speaks, would you say speaks American Sign Language? That,
I think you could probably say that without offending
Technically,
anybody.
I guess
that
that's the
is,
wrong
has
thing,
some
but-
degree of fluency with it.
right. So so that's something for us to, kind of further research.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that concludes my report. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to finance and facilities, and I understand you were going to give the report. Thank you so much.
Yes, seeing how the 3 members of the Finance Facilities Committee are not in attendance this evening, we did not have a committee report. So I will review some of the agenda items, and I have a few things to report. Items 1 through 11 are the standard financial reports, bill lists, travel spreadsheet. Item number 12 is the annual submission of the grant formerly known as No Child Left Behind NCLB. Now it's known as ESSA or ESEA. They keep changing the letters. ESSA. Item number 13, this is good news. We went into discussions with our current phone service provider. They provide voice over IP hosted service. We had one more year left on our 3-year contract, but we are going to renew now, and we will be saving over 50% of the cost, the monthly service cost. This is beneficial because we either are losing or have lost the discounts through the E-rate program, which is a federal program. They have moved their focus to technology infrastructure rather than phone service. So when like our internet service, and if we were to need things for Wi-Fi, they would be funding those at a higher percentage. So we still get a benefit from the internet provider. Item number 14 are professional services that are related to administrative training, which took place in beginning of August, and also services through the Title I program, paid from Title I for tutoring at non-public schools. Item number 15 is an amendment to an existing settlement agreement, which is related to an out-of-district special needs placement. Item 16 is a new placement for a student who's going to be taking one class at Middlesex County College, a special needs student. Item 17 is related to staff development workshops, which are going to be paid through the ESSA Title IIA, which is related to professional development. So that's funded by federal grants. Items number 18 and 19, every year the state reassesses or reanalyzes the amount of transportation costs and gives districts additional transportation aid to cover non-public transportation needs. So this is for last year, but because the aid comes in July, we're allowed to use it in this school year. So item 19 is appropriating it into this year's school budget. We are going to use the money to cover costs for transportation to athletic events, because we've seen a big increase in those costs due to the fact that we aren't able to get school buses to cover it. And that's due to the timing of the regular routes that they do and how soon they would have to get here in order to get to the athletic events. So nobody is bidding on it. So we have to go with coach buses, which are more than twice as expensive. Wow. This is the second year in a row that we're having this problem. Item number 20, we received $347,880 in extraordinary special education aid for last year. We had budgeted $200,000 for this, and so we do have a little excess, which we will be discussing with the committee at our next meeting on September 11th, as far as the best way to appropriate these funds into this year's budget or to reserve them for next year's budget. The amount we received is $62,600 higher than what we got last year, so that's a good news. Of course, that's a result of our higher special ed costs, which is not good. Item number 21, we received $208,092 of additional state aid. We received the notice just before the last school board meeting, so we didn't have a chance to really do anything with it. At this meeting, we are simply accepting the aid. At the next meeting, with the committee, we'll be, again, discussing the best use of this additional funds, which may be one-time funds. We don't know whether it is going to be a standard or just a one-time infusion. So at the next September 11th, the committee will be meeting and we'll be discussing these additional funds. But we also need to think about costs that we are incurring outside of our plans. One of the things I received a notice of on August 8th was that there is a high likelihood, it's been recommended by the company who does the recommendations to the state health benefits plan for what their premium rate increases should be, and Mr. Presti will be happy to hear this. They're recommending a 13% rate increase. Yes, we budgeted, in our budget, we budgeted 8.4% increase because that's what the state told us to budget. So we are going to be looking for about $90,000 to cover that shortfall. And so the likelihood is that we're going to need some of this additional aid to cover that.
So the air conditioners might be.
That's, again, we need to discuss, perhaps putting off additional air conditioners till the end of the year and just see if we end up having money to cover it. But,
Yep.
So we'll be discussing all that on September 11th. Last week, this is promising news. Last week, I received a call from the program coordinator of a company called STS Global Studies. The STS stands for Student Travel Schools. They bring in international students into schools in the States, private and public, and they found out that we are an F1 district, and they are interested in forming a partnership with us. No obligation, we're not committed to just them, but they're interested in bringing students in for either a full year or possibly a semester. It sounded very encouraging. And these students are actually more European students.
So they might have expertise with English, perhaps?
They'll be more fluent in English. In fact, probably very fluent in English. So I don't think the language will be a barrier.
Excellent.
We do have a application they'd have to complete, and there's a minimum TOEFL score we require them to pass. TOEFL's the standard.
Right. I know sometimes those scores, you think it's an acceptable score. It'd be wonderful to have as many international students as possible. We have such limited resources for our own students that are struggling with English. But that's good to hear.
Whatever happened with the program that Elsie came and...
If I can answer, we are going to be receiving 2 students through her agency for next year. I think, we have 2 applications. They've already, paid for the cost of their education, and I think they're just going through their visa process. I only heard about some difficulties with one of them who needed a copy of a receipt from us showing that they actually paid the educational cost. But I expect that we will be seeing those students in a couple of weeks.
Wow. Do we know what country they're from?
They're from China.
From China?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very interesting. What are they at the high school level, or?
Yes, most of the students that we would expect would be seniors.
Seniors. Okay.
Because they're only allowed to stay in a public school for 1 year, and so the likelihood is that they would stay with us for a year and then want to graduate and then hopefully go to
It's desirable to graduate with a U.S. high school diploma.
Right.
I see.
As they look forward to a 4-year college or university.
I see. Bless you. What does it mean that did you say an F1 district?
F1 is the type of visa.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it means it's possible to get an F1 visa by enrolling in our district, is that?
Yes. The student gets an F1 visa, which is to study in the States.
I see.
A student can come to the States for more than 1 year if they go to a private school. But if they go to a public school, they are limited to 1 year.
Huh. I wonder what motivates
And it's high
that.
school only. And then, of course, they can go to college.
But we've become well versed in this area, in this stuff. There's such a thing as a J1 visa, which is similar but allows for more time to be spent in the States, because the individual coming over with a J1 visa has already had to have secured employment ahead of coming.
I see, which would be sort of unusual for a student. Right. Yeah, right. Okay. Excellent. Wow, that's very interesting news. Thank you. Okay, so any questions for now about finance and facilities? We're all waiting our expert financial committee colleagues. All right, Judy, would you take us through personnel, please?
Okay.
And communication.
So my fellow personnel committee members were not available either. So
Sorry.
So Michelle stayed for my committee meeting, which is very nice.
That's how much I wanted to be.
Yes, so there was some good news and bad news. The bad news was some of our earlier hires that we approved in previous meetings. 2 of them have changed their minds and will not be joining us. One of them was for the special ed position at the high school in English, but you will see that we have on the agenda a new candidate, which we'll be discussing a little bit. And the other person was the part-time Wilson-trained teacher that was going over to Bartle. So we will be advertising for that position. We also discussed, besides the word language, we discussed an update regarding the school media specialists for part-time Irving and full-time Bartle. We have not filled those positions yet, but we are in the interview phase. So we will keep you posted about that. So let me just run through the agenda. Number 1 is approval of substitute teachers through Source for Teachers. We have a few resignations on the agenda. Number 2 is the resignation of Nick Faringo from the coach for the middle school soccer position. We have a resignation of a para, Elizabeth Varaday. And number 4 is a resignation of the central office administrative assistant, Elizabeth Pensinger. Number 5 is a new hire. It is we're asking to recommend the hiring of Caitlin Fetko over at Irving for a special ed position. Number 6 is a approval of a maternity replacement over at Irving also. Helen, cannot pronounce his name.
Sakis.
Thank you very much. 7 is a middle school nurse, a medical leave replacement. So we were happy to get that position filled. Number 8 is the Mandarin teacher. And Scott, did you want to mention that now?
Sure, I can just share with you a wonderful reference we got from the principal of the Amsterdam Elementary School in Hillsborough, where she did a replacement stint. Ms. Chang did a magnificent job with our program. I appreciate the use of the word magnificent. She had a great rapport with both students and parents, and if they had an open position, they would offer it to her, but it was just a maternity leave.
Great, thank you. Let's see. See if there's any other really highlights here.
Oh, can I just say one thing about the?
yes.
It's great. I'm just looking at her resume now. I'm embarrassed to say, having just gotten back from vacation.
Wonderful.
It's wonderful, and I love that she is committed to serving our students with different learning needs, whether those be students that are exceptionally quick at picking things up, or our students with learning needs that need more support. It's great to see that she put that up front and center on her in her summary of her sort of teaching philosophy. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Scott, did you want to talk about the new hire, a special ed teacher? in the high
Sure,
school?
Ann Middleton.
Ann Middleton, yeah. Number 18.
And I'll also just back up a step and
Yep.
mention that within the last 24 hours, we've actually gotten confirmation that the candidate we wanted to hire for the reading specialist position accepted the position. Oh. It's a part-time position.
Okay.
But I am going to be recommending to the board her candidacy. I'll make sure the personnel committee gets her resume first.
Wonderful.
Next week at our special meeting, since we're
Okay.
dealing with personnel,
Why
I thought
not?
I would just put it on the agenda.
Okay.
So that's a good sign. Ann Middleton is going to serve as the high school English language arts special ed teacher. She'll also be working with some of our GLOW students in the community-based instruction class. They loved her in South Hunterton. Her supervisor for special services, they had to reduce her position, which is why she's leaving, incidentally. They didn't need a English certified resource room teacher. They consolidated positions. She was an excellent teacher, able to reach students at many levels of need, collaborated very well with colleagues, which I like to hear because we are moving towards a co-teaching model. Not only a strong special education teacher, but also a highly skilled English teacher. Planned excellent units, happens to be very well versed in Read 180. So that's a good catch.
That was really good news. Thank you. Okay, so let's see what else I wanted to mention real quickly. I have to read in a correction that Linda gave me. Item 28. Go there. The approval of professional development hours. We're taking off of the agenda Amin Abdu because he's actually a source for teachers maternity replacement and not a district employee, so we can leave that out. I guess those were the main points of the meeting. Any questions?
Will that replacement teacher be receiving some sort of instruction on Math 180 if he needs it, or? I'm sorry, you just said that Mr. Is it? I just crossed off his name and I can't read it out. Mr.
Yeah.
Abdu? Is that what it says?
That's a source for teacher.
Right. So will he be? Does he need instruction on?
So that person will be paid by Source for Teachers.
The payment.
At that rate. Yeah, I do want to clarify
Sorry about
something again for the board's sake. Remember, we decided that we would tap Source for Teachers, our substitute service, first to find qualified candidates to fill long-term sub positions.
Right.
And when we couldn't, we would have to go in-house. So in this case, we were fortunate we found a very viable candidate for math for the full year to replace Ms. Spat,
Great.
who's out a second year. In the case that you noticed a few minutes ago, Judy mentioned an Irving replacement teacher, and of course a nurse replacement that we are hiring internally. That's because we couldn't find anybody viable through Source for Teachers.
Great, okay. And we have the opportunity with these long-term replacements from Source for Teachers to interview them personally. In other words, Mr. Abdoob, he's not just recommended by Source for Teachers, right? You're able to interview him and speak with him? And,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
We went
okay.
through the regular process. that
But
we
he's
would go
produced
through.
by,
Yep.
okay, thanks.
2 rounds,
Oh, fantastic,
all
okay.
9 yards.
Great. I'm sorry. Are we still doing personnel? Are we
Any more
come to a
questions?
conclusion? Not from me. Thank you.
Anybody? No? Okay. I guess
All
that's
right.
it for me.
So I believe that brings us to policies, and there is nothing to report. I will say that we are going to once again put off our policy committee meeting, which was going to be on the 31st, because you and I are the only ones who are able to attend. So we will be putting that off until sometime in September. There's one policy that Scott wanted us to take action on relatively quickly for special ed compliance reasons. So I will be, see, it's you and Michelle and Sharice. Once Scott gets me his input, I will be sending that out to other committee members to look at. So hopefully we can get it on the next agenda, even if our meeting does not occur before then. It looks like most of the changes Strauss Esme has proposed to this policy are pretty trivial and, just mirroring statutory language that may have changed. Okay, so be on the lookout for that exciting email. All right, equity and excellence, Sharice.
Well, Michelle already reported on the comprehensive equity plan statement of assurance. Thank you, Michelle, for being the sounding board for that, since I could not meet with Scott for the Equity and Excellence Committee
My
meeting,
pleasure.
which I'm supposed to chair.
It was good. It's all good.
So
August is difficult.
we will be setting a new meeting shortly. It'll probably be sometime in mid-September. I want to wait for Rob to get back before we try to set a date. But that's it. The comprehensive equity plan, the statement of assurance gets done every year, whereas the actual plan itself is once every 3. So this is just our year 2 statement of assurance. We don't have anything extra, but we are working with Gen Nap as a committee to ensure that we keep the plan up to date and, as well documented as we can, so that when we go to do that year 3 full write-up, that it's not as much work for her on the back end. It's more of a, okay, once through, let's review, we did all these things we were supposed to do, report out to the state, we're good to go.
That's great. It won't be sort of a last-minute thing
Right.
where we're floundering around trying to fill out that form. Okay.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
It'll be all in place.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Any questions about equity? And I believe it's time, if I'm not correct, to Scott.
Well, I was just going to
Ask
say that I
Scott.
think we missed public comment.
No, it's coming next.
Oh,
Okay, good.
yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not following
I actually
straight.
was about to miss public comment, but thank
for it.
you. I wasn't going to miss it. No. I had it right here. Okay, so the Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation in our meetings, and we have reserved this time for our comments. We have 2 board policies, 164 and 167, that establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. We have only 2 members of the public here. We have Keith Presti and our videographer. Does either of you have a comment you'd like to make? Anybody watching at home? We have a second public comment period coming up, so rush right over to the middle school. We would love to hear from you. For now, we'll move on to the board action items. Let's see, Michelle, would you like to move the curriculum and instruction items?
Yes, Anne, I would.
Please,
Okay.
after you.
I would like to move items 1. We're going to table item number 2. Then, I'm sorry, we're also tabling number 3. So we're moving item 1 and then 4 through 7.
Is there a second?
Second?
Wonderful. Linda, may we have a roll call, please?
Wouldn't we have discussion?
Oh, yes, we should have discussion. I apologize. Discussion. Any discussion?
Going back to the Mandarin language classes.
Sorry,
I
Rob.
see the approval form for the heritage course, but I didn't see for introductory Mandarin.
I noticed that too, yeah.
And are they both was it just a, I guess I just didn't see that form in there.
I didn't either. Is it just like learn Mandarin? For sure.
Yeah, there are two. There's one for the native speakers, and then there's one generally for grades 6 to 8.
Okay.
Are you looking for a specific intro approval form? Because we can create one.
No,
Yeah, we didn't- it didn't-
But all that was in our folder was for the heritage version.
But there is presumably a form
Presumably, there's a form for the
that we just did not receive in
So,
our drive.
The question I did have, though, in relation to this, within the middle school right now, do we have a Spanish language class and then a Spanish language heritage version?
We will have a native speakers. We're calling that native. We're calling the Spanish program a native speakers program.
Okay.
We're calling the Mandarin program a heritage speaking program because the difference being that Mandarin is a dialect and Spanish is a language unto itself. So that's how we've distinguished the two. But we will offer that in fall. So there'll be two strands for both Mandarin and Spanish, one for native speakers and then one for
Okay.
everybody else. But I'm going to verify that the form is somewhere. It should be in the agenda folder. I'm sorry about that. The general grade 6 to 8 Mandarin form.
I didn't know that actually, or I'd forgotten that we had a heritage or a native strand in the middle school.
Right. And
I knew we did in high school, but that's good that it starts in middle school.
Right, and this goes a little bit aside from the overall discussion, but one of the things that I find a little hard on the board side in terms of overall curriculum is I think we need to have a comprehensive listing or for someone to remind me where to look whenever I'm looking to see exactly what the courses we offer within the district are, particularly over the summer when sometimes the course outlines and the books. I know the high school course guide is actually pretty comprehensive, but when it comes to like the middle school, it's a little back and forth. And when you look into, on our end, when you look, you see a lot of the older documents also from like 2012, 2010, which might no longer apply. So if when tomorrow or the next day when you're thinking of it, if you can help me find that resource.
I'll make a note to
That'd be great.
to do that, but also
Yeah.
to update the middle school program so it
Okay.
models the high school program. I agree. I think the high school program is very comprehensive.
If I could,
I think you'll just be hearing from a lot of parents since the middle school schedules just went out. There's going to be a lot of questions, so that would probably be helpful to the public to have a.
yeah, I just wanted to request that you send that information that Rob requested to me as well. I'm sure we'd all be curious because I have the same problem. I kind of feel like between all of the different, middle school and high school course offerings, it's a little difficult to find out what's live and active and what's just on the books.
Thank you. All right, so we had discussion. Is it now time for a vote? All right. So now we have a roll call, right? We've already had the motion.
Yes.
May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Nicola?
Yes.
Ms. Pietrobono?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Roslowitz?
Yes.
All right, Linda, would it be appropriate for you to make the motion for finance and facilities? We need a board member.
No, I'm not a board member.
Okay. I would like to move finance and facilities numbers. I think we're moving everything on the agenda, correct? With the exception of a correction. Numbers 1 through 22, including the correction. No, wait, there was no correction read into the finance report. It's just 1 through 22. Is that correct, Linda?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I would like to move 1 through 22 on the finance agenda. Yeah. Is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. May we have discussion? Does anybody have a question or comment?
I had a very quick question. On number 12, the submission of the consolidated subgrant application. So, we have some very specific amounts where like Title I, Part A, 317, 396. Are these all basically on a funding formula that's given by the state? So
Yeah,
it's
they
kind of-
basically, I think with Title 1A especially, they include an analysis of the low-income students percentage in our district.
So on
So
each
they-
of these, it's essentially the maximum that we can,
Apply
by
for.
law, request in those grants. Okay.
Yeah, they tell us, this is your allocation, so if you want to submit an application, this is how much you can ask for.
Okay.
May we have a roll call on those items, Linda?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden G. Nicola?
Yes.
Ms. Pietrobono?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Roslowitz?
Yes.
All right, Judy, we're moving on to personnel and communication. Would you like to move the pertinent items?
Yes, so it's going to be items 1 through 34 with the correction on number 28.
May I have a second?
Second?
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments about the personnel and communication items? Rob? Nothing? Okay.
Give him a minute,
All right.
because I did not highlight everything on mine, because it was very lengthy, and my computer's
It's just-
broken.
It's just the one correction, correct, right? Just the
Yes.
one on 28?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. All right, hearing nothing. Linda, may we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Di Nicola?
Yes.
Ms. Pietrobono?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
Yes.
All right. Nothing. Oh, yes, guess we need to vote on equity number 1. Okay, Sharice, would you like to move the equity item?
I would like to move equity item 1 and only.
May I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion on that item? All right, Linda, may we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Di Nicola?
Yes.
Ms. Pietrobono?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
Yes.
All right, it looks like we are here. We are now coming to our board liaison reports, which might be quick. Municipal Drug and Alcohol Alliance, that's a student member.
He did not attend the summer meeting,
Okay.
so, but Josh is with us next year.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, fantastic. Michelle, was there a I can't even say it. Wait, what does this say? Borough of Public the Public Information Bureau of the Borough?
Yeah, Borough of Public
I don't know what it's called.
Doesn't make sense.
I don't
That's
know
what I would
that
have written
is,
too.
but
Is there a public
the,
information report?
Public Information Committee or group did not meet since the last meeting, so I have nothing to report.
Oh, that's tragic. Okay, Highland Park Television, Michelle.
Again, same deal. No meeting.
Okay, the Ed Foundation is Rob Magaziner, who's not with us tonight. Commission for Universal Access, Judy, did anything?
They do not have an August meeting.
Okay. Public Library, Scott, do you know if Suzanne?
I guess we should have asked.
Oh, I guess we should have asked Suzanne while she was here.
There's a meeting coming up on Monday night that I anticipate Ms. Ackley will be attending.
Wonderful, and we'll be able to speak with her at our September meeting.
Yeah.
Our first September meeting. Shared Services is Darcy. She'll fill us in, I'm sure, when she gets back. Ruth, was there a CPAC meeting or any information?
No.
No, we're just really powering through. Sharice, Parents of Students of Color, anything to report?
On summer hiatus.
Okay, Human Relations, I was out of town, but we'll be getting the minutes for the next meeting to report. Board of Health is Mr. Krieger, who's not here. Rob Roslevich, was there a Green Team meeting or any Green Team information to report?
Not this time.
And I'll just skip ahead to N, Middlesex County School Boards, anything to report?
No.
Oh, that's you, I think.
Not this time.
Yeah, sorry.
I had to think about it for a second.
And Darcy, of course, is a delegate to the New Jersey School Boards. I think she was going to be working on that charter school study team, so I'm sure she'll have something to report to us when she gets back. You will not be surprised to hear that I have no president's report, nor did Darcy give me one to read to you. No, I didn't. I didn't. I have a variety of random observations I could make, but I'll save that. Okay, 17, old business. Okay, we have something here from Scott, re-registration update. I assume you're going to tell us who has now registered.
I
who
do. Let me just pull it up.
failed to do so the
our
first time?
numbers are we're getting our numbers down. We're doing a good job in that area.
Good
So
thing
we
they're not
currently have at the high school only 11 students to re-register. We initially had to re-register 130 students. At the middle school, 54 students. We started out with 231 students to re-register. Bartle, we still have 84 students to re-register. We opened up with 100 and 252 students to register. So we're getting there, and we hope by 2 weeks from now we'll be in better shape.
Okay. Information is obviously going out to all these parents about how to. Okay. And I assume the administration will alert the board before undertaking any sort of intensive investigative.
Before we kick anybody out?
Yeah, or any kind of. But before we start, sending out public-private investigators.
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right, good. So parents, please come and sign up and re-register and all of that. And I assume that there's information if parents are not available to come at the during normal business hours, how to email you or call you or their appropriate principal.
Yeah, we've been actually calling.
Oh, okay.
Since there's so few left, so.
Information is out
Give
there.
all the information. Personal touch.
Personal touch, wonderful. Okay. Does anybody else have any old business that we can deal with in
Yes, but not
less than
board
3
meeting.
hours? Yes. Other side of the table? No. Okay. New business. Would anybody like to bring up some new business? Okay. Public comment. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Again, please see board policies 164 and 167, which establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in our meetings. And I see we do have one member of the public who is at the podium. Keith Presti, what would you like to share with us?
Keith Presti, HPEA president. I just would like all meetings to be this brief and short. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for your input, Keith.
In all fairness, I sent him a text to prompt him to say that, but no. No.
He got a big coffee too. He was prepared.
I know you were ready. Now you're going to be up all night with nothing to do. All right. Any other public comments? No, nobody raced from their house. Okay. So it is.
Do I have to put that in the minutes? What do I say?
Keith Presti.
Probably an emoticon for that.
Yeah, an emoticon, just a smiley face, perhaps.
PTA president has jokes.
All right. We've now reached the point where we adjourn. Would anybody like to move to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Do we need a roll call, or should I just say
Voice vote.
voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we are adjourned. See you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.